Let me close. I have a couple comments. First off, let me say something about Simhar. I've known her for at least 2 decades. She don't look like it. She looked like about 21. But I've known her for at least 2 decades. And I can say that she's been one of the people, the toughest people I know in Washington, has walked the walk and talked the talk. And so we don't always agree. We never have always agreed. And that's great, you know? But we've always respected each other. So I want to applaud you and thank you for the work that you do. I want to also say something about YALI. I have a special place in my heart for YALI. President Obama, when he first came to power, you know, he came to Washington with the banks had crashed, the housing market had crashed, we were fighting 2 wars. He also followed the most successful president we've had working on Africa, in George W. Bush. Right. Like a lot of people don't want to give Bush credit, you know, he was the one who crashed the banks, but on Africa, he got it right. You know, $15 billion for PEPFAR, $5 billion for Millennium Challenge account. He met with all the African leaders. The Africa team at that time was the strongest under Chindai Frazier, Colin Powell, Secretary of State. So as an African American, I had no issues with Bush on Africa. And so Obama comes to office, first black president in the history of the country. You know, we all know about our country. It's the racist nature of this country. Black man, president, his name Barack Hussein Obama, you know. So, you know, no money in the kitty. Following George Bush, I got a call from a close staff at the National Security Council who said, the president want to know, what do you think he can do to help Africa, given the state the country almost bankrupt, given the fact that I'm the first black president, I got to put people back to work, I got to get America back moving again. So the question became, what do you think he should do? So I wrote a paper, and in that paper I told him, I said, I don't think you ought to follow the old leaders in Africa, the Mugabe types, and you know, your president, Mr. Biya, and others. I said, focus on the ones coming up, the generation coming up, the next generation. And that was the seed for YALI. And I'm absolutely honored and pleased with what has transpired. I think that YALI, 10 years from now, we'll see it. We don't see it so much now, but we'll see it 10 years from now, not only in terms of government, but we'll see it in business and trade, education, culture, and all aspects. I thought that the way they organized YALI, I thought that the selection process using the U.S. embassies were perfect. Many of the African leaders thought that we were deciding the future of Africa, and that wasn't the case at all. But I think the embassies did go and look for diversity. I did see all classes of Africans, handicapped, it didn't matter, whatever part of the YALI program. And I applaud the government for how they did that. I've met a lot of the YALI people. I meet them. I organized my own YALI meeting in Namibia before this May. And I called all the YALI from before to one meeting. We had a heck of a session. And I had Julius Garvey, Marcus Garvey's son, with me. So we're sitting in the window talking to the YALI fellows and the ones who were coming this year. And, you know, they're looking at Garvey and saying, wait a minute, trying to do the math. So I have nothing but great things to say about YALI. I think IREX has done a great job logistically in putting the program together. And I have no real concern. That's a skill in itself, you know. And I know CFA could have done that. You know, we don't have those kind of skills. So I applaud the logistics of it. There are some issues, you know, any program, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. Any program you can find criticism. Any program. I don't care if you're giving out gold bars, you know. Somebody's gonna say, wait a minute, these bars are too heavy, you know. So I don't, you know, criticism, it goes with the territory, and I respect that. But also advocacy. Sylvie Bello is an old friend. And, you know, Sylvia will say things that I'm thinking about, but I won't say. And, but she will say them. And I personally think what I found is no struggle, no progress. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. If you don't say something, nothing's gonna be said, you know. You gotta say something. You gotta say something. I kind of developed my strategy. I've been in Washington. I've been working on Africa all my career, 40 years. You know, I don't look it. I said with next generation, I'm gonna paint my hair and come to this meeting a little bit darker hair, but I said, no, let it go. But I've been working on Africa for 40 years, started as a Peace Corps volunteer. I spent many years with Africa. I spent many years on the ground in Africa. And I was brought back to Washington to help build a base of support for Africa in the United States. And so I spent a lot of time educating Americans about Africa, informing, trying to get people to work together, and to build a base of support for Africa. Now, we're not going to agree on everything. And myself personally, I don't claim to be an expert on anything. I'm not the expert on trade. I'm not the expert on governance. I'm not the expert in agriculture. I'm the expert on advocacy now. That's my base. But I don't claim to be the expert. In Washington, you don't want to be the expert, you know. One way you survive in Washington is not being the expert, but relying on experts. I say, I'm not the sharp knife in the drawer, but I got access to all the sharp knives. I could call them over here. I could call them over there. I can get the people who do know. Somebody called me up about a trade paradigm. I don't know anything about trade, but I called Mike Williams, who wrote the trade legislation. He wrote a GOA. He's my good friend. Mike, what do we want to say about this? And Mike could tell me the truth. I come back and everybody said, boy, that Mellow Foot is a smart guy, you know. But to be honest with you, I try to be a consensus builder. I try to be a coalition builder because I know in order for us to move forward, we got to unite. The whole thing about Pan-Africanism, I read all the good books. I can say this to the young people. One, you do need mentorship. You do need advisors. You know, the way you're going to do it is going to be different than the way I did it. One, you got technology at your disposal that we didn't have. I think the internet, you know, you guys, you know, when you were babies, they gave you a computer, you know. So your whole generation is coming up in a different way of communication, which I think is great. But I think in terms of, you know, how to navigate some of this stuff, I think in terms of the strategy, we can be very helpful, and we should be very helpful. But that don't mean that we're telling you what to do, you know. Black Lives Matter, you know. You know, the young people in this country are driving a lot of this stuff, you know. And despite the fact that a lot of us don't want to, you know, act like, well, we know, should Kaepernick stand or should he fall? Should he stand? I wrote about the flag when I was in college. Why blacks don't stand for the national anthem. I got the article, you know. I had a column called "The Back of the Bus," and I wrote about why blacks. This was back in the early '70s, you know. And so now I'm hearing this debate again about some of the issues, and I personally think if you don't protest, if you just go along with the program, you get what you deserve. And so I applaud these young people. You know, I'm asking myself about the YALI. Are you talking to these Black Lives Matter people? Now, when you meet them one by one, my daughter's one of them. You know, when you meet them one by one, they're high achievers. They go to best schools, Harvard, and all this kind of thing.
That's right.
You know, they're not. When I grew up, the young people were Black Panthers, and we just, you know, socked it to the town. But a lot of the young ones coming up now, they got master's and doctorate degrees from the best universities the country has to offer, you know? And so I think it's important going forward that the young leaders in Africa also meet the young leaders in America. I'm going to push hard. What I do is I help lobby, make things happen, and my goal is the next administration. Now, we have no choice but to support YALI. YALI is a fantastic program, and we're going to support YALI. We're going to make sure, you know, we're supposed to come out of this year with the recommendations for the next administration. We have a big meeting on Thursday. The president of Namibia is coming. Linda Thomas Greenfield will be there. Congresswoman Karen Bass would be there. Andrew Young would be there. I said to her, I think you're going to make a stop. You're going to come through, I believe. But, you know, the recommendation coming out of here is to support YALI going forward. We want the next administration not only to continue it, but to expand it. You know, I would like to see a component where, say, African Americans might go to Africa for 6 weeks, you know, for their part of the YALI fellowship and get their internship in Wallace-Abubu and places in Africa, get a chance to see Africa in a real kind of way, because they don't know. They don't know. And then maybe there's some interchange. You know, I just think some great things can come out of this if we use our head. So we're going to lobby hard to make YALI a hallmark of the next administration. But we're going to also push hard to push up, you know, change it a little bit, tweak it, whatever. There's no choice. It's the best program the U.S. government has ever had with Africa. I mean, I don't think anything I've seen matches YALI and the impact it's going to have on Africa. So the recommendation is that we're going to strengthen YALI, we're going to support it, we're going to strengthen it going forward, but we're going to also try to improve it in some kind of way. Then I think we're going to be looking for people to give ideals and so forth. And IREX and State Department and USAID should be open to at least hear the ideals. You know, that don't mean you're going to do them, But at least here's the idea. What we're saying, I'm out of the Pan-African Struggle. I do see the fact that most of these organizations, even the social media coordinator is white, You may tell me we don't have nobody and some of the best people I know on social media are Africans sitting up in here, But yet, when I look at the contract and who gets the business of doing stuff, who even organized the event? We don't have event planners, We can't even make food. We were slaves. That's what we used to do. And we don't have the opportunity to share our love and our support for our continent, That's all we're asking for, So I applaud all of you for coming. I think that the next generation issue, we've had, this is our 4th meeting in the series, and it's been fantastic. It has been absolutely fantastic. Today we talked about healthcare infrastructure in Africa. We had a nice crowd at the Africa Union Mission, right in the AU. And man, it was amazing the people who were there and the organizations coming to try to figure out, can we work together to improve, we're talking about the CDC in Africa. I was here during the Ebola crisis, and we were all crying and doing what we can, and 10,000 people died, and the countries of Sierra Leone, Liberia, they were wrecked. They're still wrecked. Schools got shut down. And so now that the dying is done, we've gone back to sleep, And I guarantee you within the next year, you're going to see another. Now, what did the Congress do? They took the money that we had allocated to find solutions for Ebola. They've taken that money and now moved it to Zika, Like robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's not acceptable. And the only way we're going to deter that kind of thing is be kind of united, put our pressure down. I'm not necessarily against protesting, that's what I used to do. I grew up as a protester. Some people say I still protest. But I think there's a time, there's a place, and there's a way to do it. I think for a CFA standpoint, we want to help the African immigrant community that's coming up. When I came to Washington, there were no African immigrants doing this work. None. They were in college. They were coming of age. And the ones who were doing it were Randall Robinson, Trans-Africa, C. Payne Lucas at Africare, and mainly African Americans who have been here for 400 years. But what has happened is the African immigrant community is emerging. And like I think, Sylvia, you mentioned they're the highest educated immigrant group in the country. And it's beautiful, But there are strategies that you got to know. There are approaches to Congress that you need to learn something about. How do you get your message heard? How do you actually get results? Is a question. And I think some of us can be helpful in just sharing the information, sharing the knowledge. Why should we not, So I just want to say in closing, Dr. Janetta Cole is my hero. There's nobody in Washington who I marched to the tune closer to than Dr. Cole. Paid her dues, heart is in it, committed to it, and this is the time. So I just want to thank all of our guests. I want to thank all of you for staying here. I like this kind of crowd. I like the crowd that stay toward the end, because usually you lose a lot of the people who just come to take a picture. But the ones who are at the end are the hardcore, and you're talking to the people you can be real frank with and real honest with. So I just want to thank all of you, and just know that we're all brothers and sisters. We're all working together on this stuff. We want Africa to rise. We want the African diaspora to rise. If you really read your books and you really understand all this stuff, we're in a real intricate time right now. And I think now is the time that we got to bring more for you young people. I'm telling you right now, you got to start talking to 3rd graders. You got to talking to 2nd graders. Where are the coloring books? Don't think that you off the hook because you're young. You ain't that young, And so you got a role to play with those who are even coming up, And I think if we start to do that, I think the biggest thing that YALI achieved, in my mind, is that the Zimbabwean met the Senegalese, and the Ethiopian met the one from Botswana, and the Namibian met the Kenyan. And now they're twittering, got my sister and brother all across the continent, because Africans have been isolated, in their little countries, And that served the purpose of the colonizers, but it didn't serve the purpose of Africans. And so I personally think that one of the biggest things that I see come out of it is that you guys got to meet each other, And I think that's going to pay huge dividends downstream going forward. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Wonderful day, wonderful series. Let's rise for Africa. Africa is on the move. We don't agree on anything. We don't have to agree on anything. I got my opinion, you got your opinion, but let's talk. Let's communicate. Let's see where the where the rubber meets the road and see what we can do to lift up our people. That's only what the ancestors, it ain't us who's asking. Marcus Garvey is asking, Julius Nyerere is asking, Kwame Nkrumah is asking. Know your ancestors. Know your ancestors are watching this. We should have brought some drums here, because we really need to get into the mood. But understand that this is history. I see myself as not a leader of nothing. I'm not the leader. My organization is so small. It's always been small. The reason we're still here is because we're so small. We're not a battleship. We're a speedboat. We can turn on a dime, and we do it. We work on network, and we work on relationships. We work on cooperation. I'm okay, you okay, And so just know all these kind of things. But I'm not the leader. I'm only a link in the chain. I learned from Randall Robinson, C. Payne Lucas, Leon Sullivan, and those who came before. I learned from them. I said and I'm only trying to pass it on to the next generation, so that you ain't got to go through the same mistakes I made. You ain't got to go through the same road I made. You guys need to build from where we stopped. If we're going to take this level, that's where you need to start to get to. And one of the things that when I came up, the guys back then were pioneers. These guys were great. Leon Sullivan was the closest thing we had to royalty. They were great. But what they did not do is they didn't call me and say, Mel, come and sit down, and let's prepare you for this next round. I had to spend years relearning what they already knew, and I wasted a lot of time, going through mistakes, making mistakes that they already knew about. And nobody pulled me aside and said, Mel, why don't you take this approach? This is a better approach for you. So I'm hoping that for the next generation, we can at least tell you where the falls are, where the pitfalls are, and so you don't have to make those same mistakes that I made. And you can start from a higher level, and I think we'll get there. Thank you very much.